Hello everyone, I am Kenshin. Welcome to Talking About History. We all know that the United States is still in a situation where inflation is difficult to control, making it impossible for the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. However, there have been 6 episodes of inflation in the United States in history. Let's take a look at the past situation today. Before the show starts, please subscribe, like, and turn on the little bell. If possible, leave your thoughts. This will help the growth of the show. Without further ado, let's officially start. Pandemic inflation worst in 40 years. Let's chew over something that's been eating away at folks' wallets, pandemic inflation. So here's the skinny. COVID-19 came along and tossed the global economy around like a ragdoll, the likes of which we haven't seen since the world was duking it out in World War II. Think of masses hunkered down at home, factories as silent as a library on a Sunday, and the shelves at the store emptier than a ghost town. Now, wheel it forward a bit. When Uncle Sam said it was okay to stretch our legs again, boy oh boy, did we have some pent-up shopping fever or what? Suddenly, everybody wanted to buy stuff, but there wasn't enough to go around. Classic seesaw scenario, too many dollars chasing too few goods, and bam. Prices start soaring up and away. Here's a number that'll knock your socks off. Between June 2021 and June 2022, prices puffed up by a hefty 9.1%. Food took one of the biggest hits. You probably felt that pinch paying 11.4% more for your meat and potatoes. For a bunch of you, this might have felt like a bolt from the blue, given we've been cruising at a cushy 2.3% inflation rate on average since bell bottoms were a thing. This price-hopping pandemic spell is the roughest we've hit since the 80s grooved out. But hold your horses, it's not Doomsville. This isn't touching the crazy times of the 1970s oil brouhaha or the post-World War II wallet squeeze. So while we're all grumbling as we shell out more at the checkout, it could be a whole lot worse, history says. Buckle up buttercups, it's just another bumpy ride on the economic rollercoaster. 5. Oil and gas spikes in 1989 and 2008. Picture it, the years 1989 turning into 1990, and boom, the cost of oil and gas is on a rocket ship to the moon, pushing the whole US inflation rate to a spicy 6.3% over a span of 12 months. Then enters the Gulf War stage left, throwing a wrench in the works, but once that dust settled, energy prices decided to chill out and inflation took a breather. Fast forward to 2008, now that's a year that'll make anyone's hair turn gray. We're knee-deep in the Great Recession. The housing market's on the fritz, banks are teetering on the brink, the stock market's doing the limbo, how low can you go? And jobs are flying out the window. Just when you think we've hit the bottom, oil prices decide to join the roller coaster, skyrocketing from a cozy $35.59 a barrel all the way to a heart-stopping $127.77. Why, you ask? Well, it's the perfect storm. China, the Middle East, and Latin America are all hankering for oil like it's going out of style, and the world's kinda scratching its head over where we're gonna get more of this liquid gold. Gas prices, they went through the roof, from pocket change under $2 a gallon to, oh, mercy, levels of $4.14 in the scorching summer of '08. This wild ride booted inflation over the 5% mark for the first time since the early 90s. 4. The 1970s, stagflation. Now, picture the 1970s in the US. It was like riding a double-loop rollercoaster because of not one, but 2 major oil shocks. The very first one hit us in 73 feet 74, kind of like a nasty surprise party thrown by the Organization of Arab Petroleum Exporting Countries, OAPEC. They were miffed at the US and the Netherlands for being chummy with Israel during the Fourth Arab-Israeli War, so they slammed an oil embargo on us. Talk about a party foul, right? Then, to top it off, the 1979 double whammy came along, thanks to the Iranian Revolution and the Iran-Iraq War messing with oil production. Just when you thought it couldn't get any worse, right? Here's the thing with oil prices shooting through the roof, it's not just gas that gets pricier. We're talking heating, electricity, and even your groceries feeling the squeeze. During that first shockwave from Dec. 72 to Dec. 74, overall inflation ballooned by 10.5%, with energy costs jumping a whopping 19.3% and grub skyrocketing 16.1%. You'd think that was bad. The sequel, the second oil shock, was the real kicker. Inflation hit a staggering 14.8% peak between March 79 and March 80, a high we hadn't seen since World War II shook things up. And to rub salt in the wound, the economy by the late 70s was in full-on recession mode. This miserable combo got dubbed stagflation, which is basically when you're stuck with the worst of both worlds, soaring prices, but the economy's stuck in the mud with high unemployment and sluggish growth. 3. The Korean War triggers inflation anxieties. Back to a time when the ink was still drying on the chapters of World War II, somewhere around the late 40s. The country had just finished riding the high of the post-war economic buzz when, oops, the U.S. economy tripped and tumbled into a bit of a slump. But, hold your horses, as this was just a quick breather before the next round. The U.S. was lacing up its boots again for a rumble in Korea by mid-1950, and wouldn't you know it, inflation hogged the headlines once again. With the haunting echo of World War II's shortages and rationing, Americans dove at the chance to stock up on TVs, shiny cars, and plenty of cans for the pantry. This shopping frenzy sent overall inflation skyrocketing to around 6.8% between 1950 and 1951, with food prices alone beefing up by 10%. Then comes the plot twist. The Fed stepped in, rolling out the Office of Price Stabilization, basically a chill out on the spending move. They clamped down on prices and brought back rationing until the Korean War punched out in 53. 2. World War II rationing led to post-war demand. Zoom ahead to the World War II era, and it's like we stepped on the economic gas pedal, hard. Reed chimes in, saying the war was like the wild cousin of conflict. It hogged all the resources and manpower it could get its hands on, and everyday Joe and Jane had to deal with rationed everything. I'm talking coffee, milk, sugar, you name it. Even rubber tires and gas. Now, with stuff being as scarce as hen's teeth, Uncle Sam, President Roosevelt, that is, put a leash on prices and rationed the things everyone was scrambling for. This kept inflation on the down low while the war was the main show. But behind the scenes, it was like a pressure cooker building up steam for a crazy post-war blowout. Despite the sky-high prices from March 46 to March 47, jumping a whopping 20.1%, it didn't faze the American families at all. They went on a buying frenzy like there was no tomorrow. Homes across the U.S. started filling up with shiny new fridges, cars lined the driveways, and stoves were on every kitchen Reno's list. Just goes to show, when it comes to shopping, Americans don't let a little thing like inflation put their wallets on ice. World War I inflation was the worst. Picture this, it's during and just after World War I, and the cost of living is about to go bonkers. We're talking every shopping list turning into a major expenditure, double for your bread, your threads, and all the knickknacks you need around the house. If you think that's nuts, from the summer of 19 to the summer of 20, prices jumped an eye-popping 23.7%. Overall, from the tail end of 1916 to halfway through 1920, prices had a whopping 80% surge. It's like everything suddenly went haute couture. So what's the deal with that sky-high inflation era? Here's the scoop from the money mavens and economists like Steve Reed over at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Turns out, wars, especially the blockbuster ones like World War I and World War II, are like black holes for resources. The government starts siphoning stuff from peacetime production to the front lines, leaving Main Street a little barren, and that's when you see folks scrambling and outbidding each other for what's left on the shelves. In a bold move circa 1920, the regional Fed banks decided they'd had enough of these roller coaster prices. So, they cranked up the discount interest rates like they were trying to launch prices into space. This was back before they had a one-size-fits-all policy for the country, mind you. But oof, that came with a side of economic indigestion, a recession that dug its heels in from 1920 to 1922. The good news? It was short. Well, those post-World War I years were like the Wild West for consumer prices, total mayhem. After that outrageous jump in 1920, prices did an about-face, dropping over 15% the next year. Makes you think twice about complaining at the cash register next time, huh?